Derech Mitzvosecha, Issur Sinas Yisroel, Mitzvas Ahavas Yisroel, the prohibition of hating another Jew, the mitzvah to love another Jew. What have we learned so far? Sefer Chinuch has described these mitzvahs for us. In the Torah it says, you shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall surely rebuke your fellow, but you should not bear sin on his account. Why I say you should not hate your brother in your heart, you shall surely rebuke your fellow, because before you rebuke someone, you got to make sure that your heart's in the right place. Check yourself first, basically. Before you rebuke someone, you have to pare your own nails, as they say. The Sefer Chinuch tells us that if someone has hatred in the heart, ill behaviors follow from there. Even if you're like, oh no, I don't hate them, I'm just being mean to them. So there's other prohibitions that get violated with that. We have the Mitzvas Ahavas Yisroel, where you shall not take revenge, bear a grudge. After the Derech Kamocha, love your fellow as yourself. Loving someone down to the soul level, all good behaviors will follow from there. You'll take care of them, you'll take care of their stuffs, their peoples, honor for them, etc. Then we saw the story from Hillel. The potential convert came to Hillel and said, teach me the whole Torah 1 foot. Hillel says, what's hateful to you, don't do to somebody else. That's the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Go study it. There's 2 questions that the Maamar is going to address on this story. We've answered the first question already, and we're going to get to the second one today. The first question is, what does loving somebody else have to do with the whole Torah? How can you say that the relationship that I have with other people, how is that the basis, the foundation of the whole Torah? What about all the mitzvahs that are strictly between me and God? Where does my feeling towards somebody else come in on all that? Not just that, how I feel towards somebody else, I can understand how that's going to affect my relationship with other people. I can see the tangible benefits of us all trying to get along with each other. Well, again, God is not in on that. Why are we saying that this is the whole underlying theme of the Torah? We see also that before someone davens, you're supposed to say Hareini Mikabel. You're supposed to accept upon yourself the Mitzvah Ahavas Yisroel. And Priyat Chaim tells us, for your davening to be successful, so must it be. That Rizal used to say Vidya, to say the confession, even though he was a tzaddik, he didn't have any sins to confess. And that goes with the idea that to a certain extent we are responsible for each other because we are all connected to each other. That is the idea of Adam being the neshama klalis, the all-encompassing soul that contained all of us. And each one of us, kind of like a tree trunk, and then all the many myriad limbs and branches and leaves and everything that could come out of that, a massive tree, everything that could come out of it, it's all ultimately from the same trunk. So we're ultimately from the same man, and we are just souls that are coming from different limbs of the body. There's an interrelation that goes there. And we saw when Adam will be as he's supposed to behave, then it's like Adam al-Elyon, I am similar to the one above. If not, then Adam is like Adama. We also saw the name of Adam, the numerical value of it, the gematria is 45, which is just like the name of God, the dimension of Ma. What is so important about the name of Ma? The name of Ma is what brings about the world as we know it. The world of Tikkun, the fixed up world, versus the world of Torah, the world of chaos. And the fixed up world is all the attributes as we've seen them, the way Elijah the prophet described it, all of them lined up in the 3 columns, and they could interrelate. Right side, left side, middle, perfect balance of the right side and left side, but they can all talk to each other, they all contain each other. This is going to correlate to man because we have a similar situation. Same way, you could have 2 totally different paths could converge on one path that's now the same path. We all come from one central person, and even though it seems like we're not connected anymore, in truth we are still connected. The same way that the veins of the body connect all the different limbs and organs to each other, that's how you can take blood from one part and move it to another part, because ultimately, even though there's different limbs and organs, they are still connected to each other. And we see that also, the way that the soul operates in the body. The soul's in the brain, and on the one end, it's the light switch for the body, so everything is equally alive, but at the same time, it's giving individual powers to each organ. It's not just giving it like, here, take some extra light and do something with it. It's giving it the actual power to that organ, limb, etc., and that keeps a 2-way streak going. That's how the brain can identify what limb is speaking to it and what it's saying to it. The similar idea here. We all still have the neshama klalis, the central soul that we're all a part of. Yes, it seems like we're all separate, but ultimately we're all still connected. So if the Rizal consensus, the Rizal being kind of like a head soul to everybody else, then definitely the source of where we all come from, God himself. So if, God forbid, there is either infighting or there is hatred between one soul and another, between one limb and another, that's going to be acutely felt on high by the source of everything. Not just that, if a person rejects someone else out of hatred, then it's like they're severing a part of themselves. And severing a part of themselves makes them incomplete. It creates a blemish, a defect. Besides the fact that that is an issue, why else is that an issue? And going back to the whole idea of why do we say Hareini, why do we accept Ahavas Yisroel upon ourselves before we daven? Because davening, specifically, which is totally between me and God, davening is in place of the sacrifices. The sacrifices used to be offered in the Beis HaMikdash, and as we know very clearly, it says multiple times in the Torah that a sacrifice must be without blemish. It must be complete and perfect. Also, the one who's bringing the sacrifice, the Kohen, has to be complete and perfect. So a person who then goes and rejects someone else out of hatred, they are severing this interconnected, interrelated aspect of themselves. They have now created a blemish on themselves. And God forbid that person does that, they're going to go stand before God, who's the perfection of all. God's going to be like, hey, wait a second, something's missing. There's a defect here. Not from your own personal behaviors, but there's a defect in your structure, in your makeup. What happened here? God Almighty, who chose this particular person to have this soul, God Almighty, who created this person, deliberately created this person, because God does not confetti creation. God said, this person is going to exist, be this person with this soul in them, etc. And you go and you're like, I see where you're going with this, but no. Which is not the same as we're not all best friends with each other. Not the same thing. We're talking about rejecting someone out of a baseless hatred. Oh, what? You don't like what I made? You don't like this person that I made? What is that? You're going to explain this to God when you come to Davino? So we see that Ahavas Yisroel is actually fundamental to the relationship with God. And now we can see that it is fundamental to the entire Torah, because that's what the whole Torah is all about. Recognizing God, God's oneness within the world, knowing that God is intimately involved with every aspect of creation, knowing knowing that God does not do anything accidentally, that God does not confetti creation, that God's involved in everything. So no, we will not reject any one of God's children. We will not reject anything that God has created. And now, God, we can do without this one. In case it needs to be said, that has nothing to do with whether or not we could reject someone's behavior. God has clear rules about what we are or not allowed to do. But that doesn't mean that a baseless hatred to just reject someone else's soul, an entity, their being, and not see a potential for them that whatever has to be done for rectification. We already learned about Teshuvah, so there you go. Okay, now we're going to look at the second aspect of what Hillel said. The convert comes and he says, teach me the whole Torah 1 foot. In short, Hillel says it's Ahavas Yisroel. That's not the way that he phrases it. The way that he phrases it is that what's hateful to you, don't do to somebody else. Why does Hillel phrase it like this? Why did Hillel phrase this mitzvah in a negative instead of a positive terminology? God bless you. Amen, Ken Yeretza. Oh my God, should we sidetrack on that for a second? Why not? Amen, Ken Yeretza means Amen, so it should be his will. This is actually a different part of Derech Mitzvosecha where it talks about how God, we learned this in Tanya, we talk about God creating the world, about how even though God speaks, but it still stays within him. Because there's a verse that says, Anei Havaya Lo Shenisi, I God have not changed. Which means to say it's not just that God created the world and was not affected by it. Remember that we spoke about a lot. That means that he still is constant. Part of that's what truth is constancy. Which means to say that even when we talk about God having emotions, God does not, in essence, experience emotions because that would indicate a change. That's a changed state. If I am happy or angry or anything like that, my state is changing. And it already says that God does not change. We do see that there are times that we do speak about emotions. God is pleased with this or God is upset with this kind of stuff. So for God, emotions and things like that are just their externalities. It's like a garment that he puts on. It's funny, the way it describes it is the same way a parent to a child. When a parent is encouraging his kid with certain things, it doesn't affect the parent. But the parent still puts on this happy face kind of thing because it's for the kid's sake. If the kid starts walking, you can say, oh yeah, it affects the parent, but not really in the sense the parent is already walking. The kid walking is for the kid to be walking. And yet you're like, yay, we're so proud of you. And you make a whole big deal about it. You're doing it for the kid's sake, not necessarily for your own sake. You don't have immediate benefit from it. It explains it a little bit in that terminology. That's kind of like God to us. God's like, yay, I'm so happy for you. Even though for him, Ani Havaya Lo Shenisi, I have not changed. Which means to say, if this is true for emotions, this is also true for Ratzon. Ratzon, if you remember, is will, want, desire. The level after delight. So even this is something that is an external garment for God. I'm going to put on this garment of desire and act according to this. Which means to say that if it's a garment, then a garment can be changed. So God himself cannot be changed, but the garments can be changed. Right now, God is making one thing happen. This is what seems to be God's will. How can we go and say, oh no, God, let's have something else happen because garments can be changed. But who could go up to God and say, change your garment? So it describes like a king. Who could go to a king and be like, let's put on a different coat today? Only someone who's very personal attendant to the king. Someone who's a personal attendant to the king could be like, okay, this looks nice, but let's put on something else. Let's change the garment. So a Jewish person could draw close enough to God and say, I see you're wearing one garment, let's change it to a different garment. As in, let's put on a different Ratzon right now. The big example it gives when we say, Yehi Ratzon Sheibana Beis HaMikdash, let it be God's will that the Beis HaMikdash should be rebuilt. God had desire for it to be destroyed, and that's why it's destroyed. Now we're like, God, let's put on a different garment to change it. Across the board, whatever is one way, whatever it is right now, this is obviously God's will. So God willed it to be. So this is why it is. That's why it is the way it is. But we have the capacity, we are like personal attendants to the king. We could go to him and be like, God, I love what you're wearing, but let's put on a different garment. And for God, it's like changing from one garment to another. Because it's not a fundamental change that has to happen in God. Anyways, if you caught that, if not, going back. Why did Hillel phrase this mitzvah in the negative instead of in positive terminology? So this is from a commentary called the Maharsha from Chedushei Agadah. He's commenting now on the story of Al Regel Achas, that he wants to be told the entire Torah on one foot. And this is actually asking this question of why did Hillel phrase it like this? So on one foot, etc., it appears that what he intended was also according to Hillel's answer, meaning that he should teach him the whole Torah, meaning that he should teach him how the whole Torah could have one foot and foundation. So he's saying that the convert that comes to Hillel is not just literally saying, teach me the whole Torah 1 foot, but teach me how the whole Torah has one singular foundation. And it said that Shammai pushed him away at the builder's cubit, whereas earlier it only said that he scolded him with reprimand, as in with a different story. And that is because here he's hinting to him that just like it is impossible for a building to stand on one foundation, so too is the Torah to broaden its commandments. You can't boil the Torah down to only one thing. Hillel did, and Shammai said you can't do that. That's not how a building stands. And it is impossible to give it only one foundation. And likewise did he hint to him below with the builder's cubit concerning on condition that you install me as high priest. That's talking about another story where a convert says to Shammai, I want to convert, but if you make me high priest, and Shammai chases him away with the builder's cubit. Hillel converts him, and he's like, oh, we'll study this. Then the guy studies. The foreign person who comes close will die, and he's like, why did you tell me this part? That the Torah does not stand only on the foundation of the priesthood. Shammai was saying it, that chasing away the builder's cubit, the entire Torah is not only standing on this one foundation of priesthood. And it says that Hillel taught him that which is hateful to you, etc., right? Hillel phrased it, what's hateful to you, don't do to somebody else. And it should be investigated. Granted, he said it to him in the Aramaic language, since that was their language then in Jerusalem. Why did he regard this change it from the Torah formulation to say with a negative expression, that which is hateful, etc.? So you could say, oh no, because Hillel said it in a different language. He said said Aramaic instead of in Hebrew. Fine, but that still doesn't explain why he changed the phrasing so much. And as he should have said Aramaic for the expression in Hebrew, Mitarchameh l'chavrach kevatach. And you should love your fellow as yourself, like the Targum Onkelos. That's the Aramaic for v'ahavta l'recha kamocha. So he says, why did he not use the Aramaic like Onkelos would translate everything to Aramaic? And it can be said that he understood the verse to only be speaking about something in this fashion with a negative commandment. As it is written about, you shall not take revenge or bear a grudge, and so you should love your fellow, etc. As in, it's words coming in the verse, so it seems like that's what Hillel was doing. Is referring to you should not do him any evil from all that which is hateful to you. However, you should love your fellow as yourself. V'ahavta l'recha kamocha is not talking about doing him good. As in, it's following on the fact of these negative behaviors, so that's why Hillel phrased it like that. It is like we say above Metzia, your life comes before the life of your fellow, and the words of Targum Onkelos also show this. See there, and it's easy to understand. This is all to say Maharsha is bringing the question. He's giving some more context to the story, but he's basically saying, why did Hillel phrase it like this? He gives one answer for why Hillel did this. This is from Tractate of Shabbos in the Gemara. We're in the middle of a discussion here, but we're just pulling out this one part. Rava said, may I receive my reward? Because when a young Torah scholar comes before me for judgment, I do not put my head on the pillow until I seek as many of his merits as possible, based on conditions and his claims. Maamar Ravashi said, I am disqualified to sit in judgment of a young Torah scholar. What is the reason that I am disqualified? It is because the Torah scholar is as beloved to me as my own self, and a person does not find fault in himself. Ein adam roa chov al atzmo. This is the part that we're focusing on. One is saying, this is good what I have done, because when someone comes to me for judgment, I find all the great things I could about them. Maamar Ravashi says, I am not qualified to sit in judgment because they are beloved to me as my own self is. I see no fault in them. I'm not objective enough for this. Focusing on this, a person does not find fault in himself, is going to attach now to this idea, what is hateful to you, don't do unto others. A person does not find fault in himself doesn't mean there's a non-recognition of his own flaws and shortcomings. We all know we've all got our things. Rather, someone else only sees what's visible, whereas this person knows the depths of his own heart. He sees no fault because his own flaws aren't as important or disturbing, as if he doesn't see them at all because of his great self-love. As in, because I love myself so much, when it comes to my own faults, I'm more forgiving with my own self. Because I love myself so much, it's a natural self-love that I have. When it comes to my own flaws and faults, I'll rationalize them, I'll dismiss them, I'll tuck them away. Someone else can only see what is outwardly shown to them, but internally, I know what the real story is. I really know what my things are, I really know what's going on with my own self. However, because of my own love for myself, I kind of downplay my own faults. It's okay, we'll take care of it another day. For me, it's not so bad. Here's the reason why all these problems I have. It's really not so bad. From Mishlei, Sinat to Medanim, Val Kol Pshan Techasa Ahava. Hatred arouses quarrels, but love conquers all transgressions. So what are we getting at over here? Though aware of his shortcomings on an intellectual level, encompassing self-love prevents an individual from objectively assessing his situation. So his flaws don't elicit an emotive response or under concern. Sure, you can be annoyed at your own self, you move past it. However, when someone else notices and understands his flaws, he becomes very angry even though he knows it's true. It's more annoying when you point it out. Not because I don't know it's true, but because where did you come from? What's in your business? Quiet. His anger isn't directed at the flaw or that the other is mistaken. Rather, it's someone else noticing and bringing it into the open and revealing what his self-love concealed. Because now it's tangible and real. When you say it, it's a real thing. Until then, I could have fooled myself, rationalized with myself. It didn't sound so bad. But once you said it, now it sounds as bad as it truly is. Where's my anger? The fact that you said it, not that it's true. Not even that you made a mistake. You didn't make a mistake, because I know it's true. How have I been living with this whole time? Because my self-love helped me live with it. But now you've gone ahead and you said it. I hate that. I don't like that situation. Hillel says what is hateful to you, as in revealing flaws and shortcomings, don't do to your fellow. Don't reveal his imperfections, spiritual or material. Don't make them noticeable and concrete. Rather, let your love be so great it covers his flaws, and intellectual awareness of them should not elicit an emotional response. The same way that you can be so rationalizing and forgiving of your own self, and you take your flaws, oh, we'll deal with it another day, we'll put it to the side, to the extent that I don't get myself into a great emotional state from it, that is how you're supposed to be behaving towards someone else. When Hillel says don't do what is hateful to you, he's saying the same thing that you hated when someone else is going to point their finger at you and say, well, what about this that you've got? And you're like, why did you have to go ahead and say it? Don't do that to somebody else. Instead, the same kind of patience, forgiveness, not fully seeing itness, blurring over of itness that you have for your own self, that is what your love for someone else should do. To that extent that you could kind of be like, okay, whatever, so we all have our things. Oh, whatever, they must have had a bad day today. Whatever, it's fine. Obviously, we're talking about it in a healthy relationships way. We have to know when to protect ourselves, but in a healthy kind of way. So what's hateful to you, as in the way you don't like when someone goes around and starts saying this about you, don't do it either. But we have an idea in general also. When you say negative things about someone else, even when they're true, you're bringing that to the fore. So as a practical thing, don't do that, because you don't want to be strengthening negative characteristics. If anything, you want to be saying praise and good stuff about someone, because that you're bringing to the fore. When a person has a great desire and yearning for another because of a powerful attraction from the essence of his soul, any wrong the other may do that conflicts with his love will not hold sway and will be nullified within his great love for him. As in, it's not just that your love should be so much that you're going to overlook these faults. The same way that when you love love someone so much and you want to draw close to them, etc., even when the negative things come, you're going to be more forgiving of them. You're the same way that you'll do for anybody who you care about a lot. That's what you have from Shir Shirim. Many waters cannot extinguish the love, nor can rivers flood it. There's actually a whole Maamar on this. But here's talking about the fact that the love for someone should be so great that many waters, as in these things that might come up, cannot extinguish your love for someone else. They cannot override the forgivingness, the willing to look past itness of your love for somebody else. Thus, Hillel called Ahavas Yisroel the entire Torah, because the interrelation of the Jewish souls to the point of becoming one entity causes a wondrous effect above, which is the foundation and purpose of the entire Torah. We have two parts here, but we already answered. Why is Ahavas Yisroel the basis of the whole Torah? Because then we are complete and we are whole, and same idea with prayer and sacrifice, etc. We come before God in completeness and wholeness. Second, what is hateful to you, don't do somebody else, as in the same way they don't want somebody else revealing your flaws and your faults, and the same way that your own self-love will make it seem not so bad to your own self, that's how you should be treating somebody else. This is why Hillel says that Ahavas Yisroel is the basis for the whole Torah, and this is why Hillel phrases it like that, because he's giving us both parts of this. Not just that, but when we have unity down here, because on the higher upper realms, remember small actions down here, great actions above, we have unity down here because great unity and oneness, we bring it all together up above. It's the unity of the Holy One, blessed be He, of Zal with his Shechina. Remember the 10 attributes? Zal, remember the small face. But it's the 6 emotive attributes, and Malchus is Shechina. You're bringing about a complete alignment. You're bringing about a complete unity between all the attributes. So it's kind of like going back to the idea of the spiritual ecosystem. That we have to make sure everything's in perfect alignment and the energy flow. So last Maamar, the Maamar of Tshuva, we learned all about how the mitzvah draws down the energy flow through all the proper system. Here, this is about having the whole alignment of the systems, having a unity of the systems when we have unity amongst ourselves. Maamar just kind of lets us know that Shechina is Malchus. So Malchus, remember, is kingship. That's that last level, because everything feeds into Malchus, and Malchus goes and then creates the next level. Malchus is called Shechina. It's called Imatata. It's called the lower level of Mother, Matronisa. Makarna Shemas Yisrael is considered the source of the souls of the Jewish people. When we have unity below, there is complete unity between God, this aspect of God that's the Holy One, blessed be He, with the Shechina, as in with the source of the Jewish people. This is not actually specifically referenced to the Maamar, but I put it in here anyways. This is a line that we say before the Baruch Shamar. We say it in Shacharis for all the prayers, even if it's Shabbos and holidays, not just during the week. It's a single line that's there right before you basically go into Pesukei Dezim, right before you really go into davening. The line is L'Shem Yichud Kutsha Brichu Shchinte L'Achda Shem. We pronounce it as Shem Yudke B'Vavke B'Yichud B'Shlem B'Shem Kol Yisrael. For the sake of the union of the Holy One, blessed be He, and His Shechina, unite the letters Yudke as in the first Yud and the Hey, with Vavke as in the second Vav and Hey. Remember the name of Havaya, that's what it's speaking about here, in perfect oneness in the name of all Israel. So we say this line about uniting these two parts, these two aspects. We say this before we start davening. Holy, because we're talking about the Holy One, blessed be He, holy is interpreted as separate, removed. That's why we say Asher Kiddishanu, that God has separated us, that God has sanctified us, means that God has made us holy. That's why it's Kutsha Brichu, like from the word of Kaddish. Kiddush separates between the mundane weekdays and Shabbos. So holy is interpreted as separate, removed. Thus the Holy One refers to God in His transcendence, as in this aspect of God that's above things. He who in His loftiness exists entirely above our limited framework of existence. An aspect of God that is not connected to physical reality. Shechina, by contrast, when we talk about the Shechina, we're talking about the dwelling of God, as in a revelation of God. If you guys remember, actually, this is the last 3 chapters of Tanya, was talking about how God moves throughout the world, and it's the aspect of Shechina because it's the feminine attribute, because the feminine is what creates. That's where Shechina comes in as a feminine aspect. So Shechina, by contrast, Shechina is like from the word of Shochin, which means to dwell. It's a part of God that enters into the world, and a lot's for creation, that's why it's Malchus. Shechina, by contrast, refers to a level of godliness that descends to the world and causes His light to rest within our finite realm. The entire purpose of man's existence is to bring about a union between these two dimensions of godliness. That God's infinite light, which exists above the spiritual cosmos and beyond time, be revealed within the spiritual cosmos and even on this material plane. So our job is to take that which is high and removed and that which is ready to move down into the worlds and to unite them. We create perfect unity. Parenthetically, how do we do that? By having unity amongst ourselves. If we're going to have rifts and separation between ourselves, God forbid, it's going to challenge the unity up on high. God does not dwell in a place where there is strife. We want perfect alignment through unity, through Ahavas Yisroel. Shechina also refers to the source of all the souls of the Jewish people. For the divine service draws down godliness into this world. So because we are drawing down this godliness, we are coming from this place of Shechina. That's the source of us. The union of the Shechina and the Holy and Blessed be He reflects how God in His transcendence becomes manifest in this world through the Jews' involvement in Torah mitzvos. When we do what we're supposed to do, we're bringing godliness down into the world. We are uniting these elements. At present, God's unity is not evident. We look around and it seems like where is God? It's not at all apparent how the world is one with Him. Only in the era of Mashiach will His unity be seen, as all flesh will see that the mouth of God has spoken. What's the difference between now and Messianic times, especially the beginning when the Messianic existence is still going to be a very physical existence, is that now we don't see God, and then it's going to be so obvious that the world is God's world, that God is everywhere, here, there, and everywhere. Saying for the sake of the union, as in this line of L'Shem Yichud, emphasizes that unifying the upper and lower realms of God's expression is the main intent and purpose of prayer. It's not just this is what we're doing, but also through prayer, this is what we're trying to do, is drawing God down. This intent should motivate all aspects of our divine service. So according to Kabbalistic texts, for the sake of the unity, as in L'Shem Yichud, this one line that we saw should be said said before every mitzvah. So in reality, because this is actually what our intentions are, that we're creating this unity so that everything can be the way it's supposed to be, we should, in theory, be saying this before all the mitzvahs that we do, not just before davening. And there are actually other Siddurim that will have this line before other mitzvahs. There are mitzvahs that people will say this line before. In the Chabad Siddur, the Alter Rebbe only included this statement in the Siddur before Baruch She'amar. And the Rebbe Rashab, so that's the fifth Chabad Rebbe, explains that fulfills the obligation for all the mitzvahs and prayers of the entire day. So the Alter Rebbe only put it in at the beginning of Shachris, right before the Baruch She'amar prayer, and the Rebbe Rashab, the first Chabad Rebbe, says you're saying it there and it includes everything. Another element, the Alter Rebbe did not include mystic intentions in his Siddur, so it would be relevant to every person, from sage to ordinary individual. Part of this whole thing of L'Shem Yichud, creating this union, is something that's a higher Kabbalistic kind of thing. And the Alter Rebbe, in general, wanted a Siddur that would be applicable for everybody, so not just sitting on these high Kabbalisticness. The inclusion of the statement implies that it's relevant to every person. So the fact that the Alter Rebbe put this line in means that it's something that we could all relate to. It's something we could all connect to, and something we could all effectuate. During prayer, every person at his level can focus on the intent implied by for the sake of the unity. As in, every person, as you're davening, you could think about the fact that we're trying to create a perfect unity between these elements of God within the world, which creates perfect unity within us, etc. For the intent to be genuine, we'd have to love God with an all-encompassing love that motivates him to devote himself to God's purpose without thinking about his own desires, not even his desire to attach to God. If on a conscious level, this love is more feigned than true, a person should habituate himself to having this intent in mind, because on a deeper subconscious level, it truly is genuine as it reflects the inner essential desire of every Jew. So even if right now you're not feeling this genuine burning love for God that's going to motivate this action that will create this unity, subconsciously your soul wants this. So at least think about it all the time. You'll habituate yourself into it. Saying this statement at this point of prayer produces an ongoing effect on the performance of Torah mitzvahs for the remainder of the day, aligning those activities with this fundamental intent. So you're saying it once at the beginning of prayer, and that's going to affect your actions throughout the day. As the Rebbe Rayatz explains, the Rebbe Rayatz is the previous Rebbe, the Friedrich Rebbe, when a person recites his prayers with the general intent to fulfill the mystic purposes explained by the sages of the Kabbalah, it's considered as if he consciously had these intents. You may not know all the deep Kabbalistic intentions of prayer. However, if you bear in mind, I don't know all the Kabbalistic intentions, but I'm bearing in mind that there are Kabbalistic intentions that should be effectuated right now, then this too is good. He may not intellectually appreciate what is being achieved, but through prayer brings about the effect of these mystic intents. It's like another thing of Hareini is one aspect of how this underlies the entire Torah and purpose of creation. L'Shem Yichud actually articulates it in more explicit language about what is the intent of everything, is creating this union up on high. Down here, we create that union by having unity amongst ourselves, between God and a part of God that is above the world and the part of God that comes into the world. We want there to be perfect unity, perfect alignment. So it's our actions down here that affect that and make that happen. This is also part of why what is hateful for you, etc., why it's so important for us to have Ahavas Yisroel and the different aspects and the way that this is. This is part of why it's so important, because we can see how much it affects not just down here, but also going up into the higher realms.